What's going on, guys? Today we're going to take a look at a $800 monster gaming productivity and streaming PC that I put together for you guys. It's the absolute perfect mix between price and performance for any of you guys looking for a killer gaming machine that doubles as a great content creating machine as well. If you're looking to get into gaming, streaming, or content creation and you have about $800 to $900, this build is for you. So today I won't be showing you how to assemble the PC, but I do have a quick time lapse of the actual build. So before we go over the time lapse, we'll be running through all the parts we used and why, and then I'll be showing you guys that time lapse, and then we'll be diving into performance numbers, which will include things such as noise, thermals, gaming, streaming, as well as productivity. The idea here is I want to make sure you guys have a complete understanding of what you would be getting if you decided to build this exact PC. If you don't know how to build a PC and you need a guide on how to build a PC, I actually did a series on that a few months back, and I'll be leaving a link to that in the cards up here, as well as down in the description box below. I will also have links to all of the parts for this build in the description box as well. And if you go down there and you check them out, you may notice that the parts might be slightly different than the parts we're using here today. And that's simply because either one, I already had a part that I could use that wouldn't influence performance at all, or it's because pricing changes in the PC market quite often. And so I wanted to give you guys like the part that's not inflated right now. In any case though, performance numbers I show you guys here today should be about the same numbers that you'll be getting if you decide to put this build together for yourself. And with all that said, let's get started. For the CPU, we use the Ryzen 5 3600. It's a 6-core, 12-thread monster of a CPU that is perfect for beginning your content creation career or just gaming in general. It has great single and multi-core performance, and it's under $200, and so is an all-around great chip when it comes to performance as well as price. I would have probably recommended my go-to chip right now, which is the Ryzen 5 1600AF, and it only goes for $105. But I am using a B550 board in this build, and so since you can't use the 1600AF on the B550 boards, I can't go with the 1600AF in this build video. For the motherboard, we use the ASRock B550M Pro 4. This guy is absolutely great for the price, and as of shooting this video right now, it's going for about $115 with a $10 rebate. So it's actually $105 if you're getting it from Newegg. And for chips like the Ryzen 5 3600, this board's gonna do absolutely perfect. It's not gonna be too much, it's not gonna be too little, it's gonna be perfect. And not only that, but if you decide you wanna upgrade to like a 4th generation Ryzen 8, 12, or 16 core chip, you'll be fine doing that as well, as long as you don't plan on doing overclocking. For the memory kit, we used a 16GB kit of HyperX Fury 3200 cast latency 16 memory. It's a great mix between price and added performance. And of course, 16 gigs is great for gaming right now, and it's also pretty good for getting into content creation. Although if you do decide you want to do more motion graphics in programs such as After Effects or DaVinci Resolve's Fusion, you may want to double it at that time, because 16 gigabytes of memory can definitely cause you some issues when you're doing that kind of work. For storage, we simply went for an inland premium 512GB M.2 drive. Now I do have an added Seagate 2TB hard drive on the parts list, but since I actually have an M.2 drive that I have all of my games on for my testing, I actually didn't use one for the actual build time lapse. If you don't have enough money to grab the drive up front, that's perfectly fine. You can, wait and you can push it to the side, save $55 off the bat, and then grab one later down the road. Now keep in mind, 512 gigs is great size for a boot drive and a few games and all of your programs. But if you're getting into a bunch of big games like Modern Warfare, Warzone, you're gonna start losing capacity very quickly. So again, that second 2TB drive is gonna be super useful at that point in time. For the graphics card, we went with the Zotac Gaming GTX 1660 Super. It's one of my favorite mid-range graphics cards, and it provides a ton of power for the price. It'll be a great 1080p 100+ FPS graphics card, and it also has the Turing NVENC encoder that will help a ton if you're going to be getting into streaming. For the case, we went with one of my favorite MATX enclosures, the Cooler Master Masterbox MB311L. Not only does it look pretty good, but it's also a nice case to build in. It has a nice mesh front panel for great airflow, and it includes 2 RGB fans, all for just $60. And if you ask me, that's actually a pretty solid deal. For the last component of this build, we use an EVGA B2 750 watt semi-modular 80+ bronze power supply that I had from an old build. 750 watts is way overkill for the system, and so I actually changed it out for a 550 watt power supply in the parts list. Now that you know all the parts that are going to be in the build, let's take a look at how it came together. So in my opinion, it's a pretty easy build to put together. The case has tons of room and the system looks great after you put it together as well. What's equally impressive is the performance of this system. And this system in general is a great performer all around. Now I'm gonna run through all of the benchmarks starting with noise and thermals, and then we're moving on to gaming, and then we'll end with productivity. And then I'll take a couple minutes to explain my thoughts on this build's complete performance. So to wrap things up, I do have a few comments in each category. The system does get quite toasty regardless of if you are using it for gaming or doing productivity work such as video editing. And these numbers were with the default fan curve, and luckily the fans aren't super loud at all, so you can safely turn the fan speed up to decrease the temperature in your system if you so choose. Now the numbers do fall within safe ranges for the components that we were using here today, so there's nothing really that you have to worry about if you decide you want to leave the fans on the default fan curve. But if you're someone like me who like to bring your temperatures down as much as possible, and you are a strong believer of bringing your temperatures down as much as possible, then that's always an option for you. Or you can do what I would recommend, which is actually to undervolt the CPU, which, believe it or not, would ultimately improve the performance in this system for cooling, gaming, as well as productivity. I have a video on that I'll be linking in the description box below, as well as up in the cards if you're interested in that. I also feel that if you can afford to invest in a few more fans, this system would certainly benefit from adding a few more fans. Moving on to the gaming performance, this build smashes high/max settings at 1080p over 100 FPS in most games, and it bounces around the 60 to 70 FPS mark in 1440p at the same graphical settings. On top of that, it also plays incredibly smooth and really well while streaming. Yes, you do see a small 5 to 10% drop in frames while streaming, but the 1% and the 0.1% lows stay nice and tight, and the system played, again, like I just said, very smoothly. And this was using the NVENC encoder built into the 1660 Super with a bit rate of 6,000 kilobytes per second, the preset of max quality, and then the profile set to high. As for my productivity flow, this PC did perfectly fine. It struggled a little bit when I was messing around with Fusion due to the lack of memory, but overall it did pretty good and will be perfect for a new content creator. The big benchmark that I ran for you guys was kind of like the render test of last week's video, which is B550 worth it? And that was in DaVinci Resolve, and I'd say the results were actually pretty good for this system. The 3600 was able to render the video in 20 minutes and 27 seconds, and this was with the stock cooler at stock settings. If you put a static CPU ratio along with an undervolt on the 3600, you would certainly see better performance while rendering and better performance in general for temperatures and everything. Let me know how you guys like this video down in the comments below. I want to bring you guys more build videos just like this one, so your input on this video is super important to me. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a big like, big thumbs up, and consider subscribing for more content just like this. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.